Hey guys and girls, Boardnell back with you. On this video I'm going to be giving some thoughts on the new Superman movie which came out today. So the new Superman from James Gunn, who previously did Guardians of the Galaxy, also Sliver, Suicide Squad, bunch of other things. And this is like the rebooted DC universe, which Gunn is at the helm at, so this is his first project, a new take on the Superman story. So you got virtual unknown really, David Kuroswet, I think that's how you say it. He's in the lead role as Superman Clark Kent. You have Rachel Brosnan, who's a bit more well known, few things under her belt. She is the new Lois Lane. And then you have Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. And a bunch of other faces. There's some regulars who have been in James Gunn movies in the past, popping up in cameos. There's quite a big cast overall, but those are the three leads. And I won't spoil too much, but I will be going into some spoilers, mostly just giving my overall thoughts on the casting and the story and how it all worked out when it comes to the film. So this was hotly anticipated, and I'm going to say that I'm mostly positive on it. I'm very positive. I did have a good time with this movie. There was a lot of good things in it, a lot of exciting action. I think there was some good casting and some interesting things going on in the movie. So overall, I think it works really well as a blockbuster. And it works really well as like a modern twist on Superman and a bit of an update. I think what it gets really right is that it sort of dances between being like a classic throwback to the older Superman and I think staying true to the comic books, although I've not really read any of the Superman comics, so I'm a bit more of a casual when it comes to that. But it certainly seems to have some nods to that stuff and some where it is like relating back and sticking true. But then you have a modern plot sort of put on top of that and definitely some new ideas. So it is dancing a bit between that. It's also playing a balance, I think, between appealing to maybe a younger audience with certain things in the movie, but then playing probably more to the adults or like the hardcore DC comic fans as well. And it's doing a little bit of a balance in that with that. So before I talk more about the film, I will touch on the politics of it because a lot of people have been talking about the politics of the storyline, because the main setup for the film is that Superman has been away from Earth for 5 years now, stranded at the Fortress of Fortune. He's been at the Fortress of Solitude, but in the meantime, Lex Luthor has been able to convince the world that Superman is the enemy and that he's responsible for this conflict between these two nations who are at war. And this is touching very much on the very real stuff that's been going on in the Middle East and very real stuff between Palestine and Israel. It's a whole metaphor for that, but this is very similar. And Lex has manipulated politicians into thinking Superman is behind this and that he's the enemy here, and also the media. And it gets into some of the online social media stuff and how things can be twisted and distorted and like the truth misrepresented, things like that. And we see in the movie then that's a big part of Superman being made to look like a villain. So it picks up with that stuff. So when it comes to the storyline and some of the politics and the way it plays up Superman's role as, let's say, an alien, so to speak, or like treated anyway like he's an outsider, like a foreigner almost, and how it highlights that and how that's almost a journey that he has in the movie where he has to find his confidence and finally have the strength to come back and say, okay, no, I am normal just like everyone else. Or at least claim that, like, I'm no different just because I'm not from this planet or this country originally, and it's playing very much on those themes. So just getting into some of that stuff and some of the complaints, and we know the typical from certain people claiming, oh, it's too woke and things like that. I'm not going to get too negative on that stuff, but just to say, it didn't really bother me. Like, obviously, I think because of what the Superman character is in his origins and the history of the character, then this stuff is totally fine. It makes sense. And it makes sense also for the Lex Luthor, sorry, he's a wrestler, Lex Luthor character to be manipulating things in this way. I mean, when you just think about the sort of character he is, then it's believable he would be manipulating stuff in this and twisting stuff, and it's the sort of thing he would be doing, the way he would use like the media. It just so happens that a lot of this stuff draws a lot of parallels between what's going on in real life, and for some people that's going to be a bit close to the bone. Now, if it was me doing it, I'm not sure I quite would have gone as far as they did, because that's the thing, like, it is actually surprising how far they do go with it in the movie, and I think at times it's a little darker than you might expect, but not without the lighter touches. Like, they definitely always remain quite light, and there's always the message of hope throughout, and which is a big part of Superman and his theme and message. But it's a struggle along the way also. But it's, yeah, I mean, I was quite impressed with how far they went, but the storyline does make sense. Like, that maybe they could have toned it down a little bit, but it does work within the context of Superman and his origins and like the comic book sort of world of it, because taking out the very serious real world stuff, I think that this stuff does fall into like a very maniacal supervillain type plot. So, I mean, I'm fine with that. The movie does balance a lot though, like I said, so I'll get into it a little bit, because I think the start of the movie was very strong for me. I think they did a nice smooth intro at the Fortress of Solitude. I thought it was a very smooth opening, the way you just had some quick text at the top of the screen explaining things. It didn't really hit you over the head with it, and I really like the look of Fortress of Solitude in this movie. In general, the movie looks very good. There's one or two scenes that maybe could have looked a bit better, but in general I really like the design and how everything sort of pops. And the Fortress of Solitude has a real awe-inspiring look about it in this movie. Very striking. Sort of simple but effective, really. But yeah, it does do a bit of a dance, because like some of the early scenes there with like these more kid friendly, because you've got the dog named Crypto, who we find out later in the movie isn't actually Superman's. He's looking after it for Supergirl. Spoiler, that's she makes an entrance later on in the movie, but yeah, he's looking after this dog, and like he sort of got like this special, gives him this special power, so he's sort of all hyped up, and he becomes a big part of it, especially when Lex invades the fortress later on and actually kidnaps the dog and starts activating his plan to really cement Superman as the villain by releasing these creatures from the Fortress of Solitude. But there's a certain amount of playfulness for the kids. There's also like these robots that he's got, these almost like R2-D2 style robots. So as I said, it is balancing that out a bit with some of the more adult or hardcore comic book type things that are going on in the movie. I did enjoy, there's quite a good scene early on where Lex has these like sort of evil flying robots, and I thought they were commanding and had a good like battle with Superman. So it's a good movie. I'll just say really a couple of problems, because there are complaints to be had, even though overall I think it's very satisfying. I think one thing is that they cram a lot into a movie that's just over 2 hours. Some characters, such as Perry White, I think could have done with a bit more time, because he's very underwritten. He's hardly in it. There's always going to be like losses, but that actor I really like, so it was a shame he wasn't really given more to do. And then there's the odd character who maybe could have been lost, or at least their role cut down. So one of the other characters in the movie is like this cartoony like dictator from this culture who Lex is using as a figurehead as part of his plan. And I think you could have cut him from the movie, or at least just had him appeared occasionally in like newsreel or something, because like him being in the movie as much as he wasn't really like adding anything. You still could have done the storyline, but not really had him as this figurehead. And he wasn't one of the better characters in a way. So I think either I would have lost him, or maybe just cut down his role. And they do try and cram a lot in, and I think most of it is worthwhile, but there's plenty of Easter eggs for fans as well, and I think that's the side where they're just trying to get in as many things as possible. And I think for the most part they get the right balance, but they do, as I said, that it is a bit of a struggle at times, because to do it in a movie which is like 2 hours 9 minutes, something like that. For the most part, the action scenes are very well done. Like, there's some standout scenes, like the dinosaur scene I thought was very good. Also, Lex's gang at the fortress was really good, really impressive CGI in that scene, and I really like how his gang have their own sort of personality. You've got that one particular henchwoman with her like razor blade skills, like she was really badass and impressive and added something else to like Lex's team. You also had his girlfriend Eve, who was in the original movie, of course, who's a bit more kind of like naive and lackadaisical, but also is secretly seeing Jimmy Olsen, and I think that actress was quite entertaining as well. So you sort of see a couple of different people in Lex's group and a bunch of characters, and that was a really good scene. There are a couple of scenes though where I thought the CGI got a bit ropey, and maybe there was just a bit too much going on. But by and large, I thought the action scenes and some of the big visual set pieces were really well done. So let's get on to the casting, because let's just talk about him, because Nicholas Hoult is a fantastic Lex Luthor, and he reminded me a lot of like a Mark Zuckerberg style character, like so a very modern type maniacal like being there. And the first scene we see him in properly is he's in like a control room, and he's rubbing the shoulders of his team and barking out orders at them, almost like a sleazy motivational like speaker. And Holt is just fantastic. He looks the part, he's got the charisma, he's got the presence, but he's also menacing. And I know one of the complaints about Gene Hackman in the original Superman is that he was just too comic relief and goofy and wasn't enough of a threat and didn't really feel like the true Lex Luthor in a way. Even though that's a very good film and probably it'll always be hard to top, but I can see, having rewatched it recently, how maybe Lex Luthor, as good as Gene Hackman is, it is probably one of the weaker parts. But no such problem here, because in a way he really steals the film. A very modern Lex. He's very convincing. Even when he's monologuing, like, the scenes are so good, like, it doesn't really feel like he's monologuing that much, or you're just so into it. And he feels like a very convincing antagonist, the way he's kind of playing the politics in a very, like, sly way and manipulating the situation, but he's also very good at playing to the audience at times and becoming like a pantomime villain. But yeah, he was excellent. Great choice to play Lex, and they just nail really what Lex Luger. I did it again. What Lex Luthor should be. And I also like, because a couple of times they have like sort of a moody bit of music which plays when he like shows up somewhere. Like, it's very moody prog instrumental, and I thought that was very good, like giving him his own kind of entrance theme, and it's just another thing that adds personality, because I also like the music a lot in this movie. Like, it complemented things, it gave it a bit more of a flavour. There's a good variety to the music, like the sort of punky song which plays over the end credits, but also you get some of the classic Superman theme weaved in. So that's another thing I really like, is the music. And also looking at Rachel Brosnan as Lois, I think she's a great Lois, very feisty. I think she has a good range and really captures in the spirit of Margot Kidder with a lot of the Kidder-esque touches, but she does have a very good personality all of her own. She's very grounded as well, makes her very grounded and likeable, and there's certain things that they've added to this Lois Lane as well, I think. And her and Superman have a good chemistry. Now, the new Superman I was a bit mixed on. I think he was a bit one-note at times, and it felt a little bit like he was doing too much of an impression, and maybe could have had a little bit more of a personality. He was fine, don't get me wrong, but he was solid enough. He's certainly not the worst person, and it's a credit to the film that I wasn't distracted too much. And yeah, he just could have maybe been a bit more, like, less one note and things like that. But he does have good chemistry with Rachel Brosnan as Lois. Like, their scenes work together. Work well together. There's a couple of really nice touching scenes between them. I do like going back to the punk rock stuff. There's a reference of how she's into punk rock, and that's very much her style music. And then she questions when he says he's into punk rock, he names some groups. It's like, is that really punk rock? And she sort of runs him down. And they come back to that later, because like that song which they play over the end credits is a reference to one of the bands they reference in the movie. So I really like that as a callback. Another nice touch is that Lois already knows about Clark being Superman, and at the start of the movie they're in transition when it comes to their relationship, so they've already been seeing each other, and I'm fine with that, because at this stage in a modern Superman movie you really don't need taking up time with the drama of Lois finding out who Superman is, especially since I think this may well be not exactly a one and done. Like, obviously we will get more Superman movies, I'm sure, at some point, but I think there won't be like a Superman 2 coming instantly. I think Brian Gunn has other plans in the meantime, but like, I think besides the original movie, like, I can understand why that would treat it like that, and actually build up to Lois like finding out eventually. But I don't think you need that in a modern Superman movie. So I think this was quite a nice, smooth way to just hit the ground running. And Also, I think it's a credit to the actress that she has chemistry with pretty much everybody in the film. I enjoyed the back and forth with her and the Justice team guy. Well, the Justice team in general. Her mocking Green Lantern's hair was great. Nathan Fillion, I thought, was an entertaining Green Lantern. Like, the whole thing, she mocks his haircut, says, like, yeah, that should be a veil. That breaks a veil right there. And he's like, there's 127 girls who would disagree with you, as like she walks away. And it's so clever the way they just use Nathan Fillion as like the butt of the jokes, where he's like a douchebag, but he's quite a lovable douchebag. And I also really like some of the scenes with Lois and Mr. Terrific. He's another like really fun character. And I think one of the things I really like about the movie and about Lois Lane in the movie is that she played such a big part in saving the day and also changing the narrative and turning things back around on Lex and making Superman seem like a hero. So it's a very proactive Lois, and she's a big part in actually saving the day. So yeah, there's a lot of strong cast members. As I said, maybe there are too many characters or too many things going on. There's quite a nice scene with Clark and in Smallville with his parents or adopted parents halfway through the movie. That's a nice little scene. But again, I think maybe stuff like that either could have got a bit more of them, or maybe not really have them in the movies. So there's some things like that that are a little bit rushed. As I said, Perry White definitely could have been given more time. I enjoyed the stuff with Jimmy Olsen. I thought he was a good Jimmy Olsen personally. I don't know, some comic book fans might disagree with that, but pretty much strong casting down the line on this one. You also had Isabel Machad, who was in The Last of Us recently. I really liked her, and lots of little Easter eggs, really. People who James Gunn has worked with before. So he got Michael Rooker, for example, voicing one of the robots. But yeah, no, I enjoyed this one pretty much. I had a great time. I would definitely watch it again. I think they cast it very well. And a lot of the big emotional scenes like landed. There were some things that were maybe like a bit on the nose. One example of that is maybe where there's a scene where Lex has like these monkeys who are like literally typing things into the internet about Superman, and like that was a bit on the nose, but even so, that part of the movie, there's a lot of good stuff, really, and there's so much going on, and it's a really entertaining movie with a dark edge to it, but also a real charm and the soul that I think you want from Superman. So that's my thoughts on Superman, the new Superman, which is in cinemas now. Because it's a first time watch, I think I'll go 7.5. So strong stuff. A couple things maybe could have been a bit better, but I had a good time, and like I said, I would rewatch this one for sure. So let me know what you guys think of it in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and share me out on social media, and look forward to more new TV and film reviews coming up soon. But take care, guys. Keep watching movies. See you soon. Bye.